Hello, everybody. We are back. The California Italians are back. And today we're going to talk about a very interesting subject. We're talking about growth. And we'll ask ourselves why growth is important, why it's here. Maurizio, how are you doing, first of all? I know you're vaccinated now.
I'm doing quite well, thank you. Optimistic as usual. And it's nice to see you again. And good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone.
Hello, everybody. Yeah. Whatever it is. So growth, of course, economic growth is something that we're all very familiar with. It's that concept that to me is based on the false premise that it is possible to have an infinite wealth growth in a world that is actually the opposite of infinite. Our resources are not infinite. Our human resources are not infinite. I want to say that it's almost like a Ponzi scheme. It works very well for the people who are at the top, and it works very well only as long as you have additional resources or additional people who buy into it. Once these dry up, then the whole thing collapses. But that's the nature of capitalism. And I think what we want to do is to try to analyze what is growth doing to us, to our industry, where we are right now, how we got there. The numbers are there. We all know them. We keep repeating them ad nauseum. We make 100 billion garments a year. There's 7 billion people on the planet. You go to any department store, to any large store, and you look around and you realize that there's no way that all that stuff is going to be sold. As a matter of fact, about 30% of everything that we produce will never be sold to anybody. No customer is ever going to pick it up. So that's a complete and utter waste. On top of that, maybe 2/3 of what we do sell will end up being discarded within a year or even less. It's absolutely beyond discussion that we are overproducing, which means there is overcapacity, which means that there is a very strong pressure on cost. Because of course, when you have so much production, so much capacity, the cost has to come down if you want to maintain your margins. There's so much competition. There is pressure on wages. So a lot of people in our industry do not make a living wage. And there is a pressure on quality, because if you have to keep making new stuff and making more and more and more, and you know that people are not expecting it to last a long time, that's the first thing you're starting to cut. You compromise on quality. So what do we do? What do you think about this situation?
Thank you for this introduction, because it opens to many thoughts, many questions, and many ideas. I think that there is not this perception, there is a science, I would say, that has described happiness, I would say, in consuming goods. There is, in my opinion, false idea that the more you buy, the happier you and your life are. And I think that, to me, this is central to our industry. You know, we know that we are producing more than what we need. It's a fact. It has been going on for a really long time. On the other side, there is this false idea that happiness has something to do with seasons and prices and buying, the need of showing, for example, your personality via clothes instead of using your brain for that. And so it's a society. It's a combination of things that we are also responsible for, because we have worked with companies and we have done our share set of damage here. But we also at a point in our life where we think what is right and what it's not. And when I'm thinking about growth and all the complications that comes with it, majority of those, the best, the best being maybe profit, and the worst being destroying planet and the people. And these are the two elements that I always look at. How much do I make? What is my yearly profit? with this growth and how many people I am responsible for their happiness, and what is the damage my factory or my operation does to the environment. So I think when I think about growth right now, instead of thinking about growth, I'm thinking about reduction, which is the opposite. It's like, what can I do less of that will be less disruptive and less negative? What is the least possible impact, negative impact I can do to society, to people and the planet? And I think that this is a question that everybody needs to ask, particularly when you own factory, when you are responsible for strategies and commercial strategies and the relationship that you need to have with people that are coming to you for certain products at a certain price point. We need to ask ourselves really what is right and what is wrong, and how do we feel when we go home at night.
You're touching on an interesting point that we're a little bit responsible for all this, because fashion is an interesting beast, because you have on one side, you have the artistic expression of something that is beautiful, and we all love to develop beautiful fabrics. We love to develop beautiful garments. We love to see beautiful people looking beautiful, wearing great stuff. So there is an artistic component in that. But what happened, I think, is that it's become a tool for the marketing people of brands and retailers to basically keep selling stuff that the people don't need. You're creating an enormous psychological pressure on people. You make people feel that unless they have the latest and the most beautiful sneakers that are out there, you're worthless. Mm-hmm. If you're not wearing that jacket there, you really don't know what's happening in the world. If you don't have the latest phone, you're a loser. We're basically creating this tremendous pressure. And because people don't really have, most of the people don't really have the means to buy the really nice stuff, but they still have to fulfill this pressure, then you feed them with cheap substitutes. And you kind of create a monster that they keep getting bigger and bigger. And I think it was acceptable to a certain point when you still had plenty of resources, when you had an increase in demand because there was more people who had access to more disposable income and they wanted to spend more. And so I think there was a point in time where it was okay. It was not great probably, but it was okay. It was acceptable. So what if you bought 3 t-shirts instead of 1 when you really needed 1? It's okay. It's human nature. It became something far worse than what it should have been. And then we got to the point where this overproduction has become counterproductive for everybody, because people don't get excited about new clothes anymore because there's a barrage of stuff that keeps hitting them from every side. It's not great for the retailers because they have to keep chasing the new idea, whatever that might be. It's not great for the factories because they have to keep producing new stuff and knowing that they're producing things that people will probably never even look at. And so we got to the point where it's just too much. So the solution is what? That's what I think we should try to discuss today. And we're not going to come up with a perfect solution, but I think what we should try and do is to look at it from the points of view of every component of our business. Let's see how slower growth or a no growth or a reduction would affect all the components in the system.
Stefano, sorry to interrupt you. I'm thinking about, I know we're not trying to be downer here. We want to inject some optimism. We're here to share ideas. We're here to think out of the box if we can, or not think about that we have a box. But overall, I am thinking that our industry and many other industry with the industry of clothing, I'm feeling that we are trapped. You know, in my work, in my consulting work, I hear what companies, brands, and factories, and there is very little happiness happening. I mean, there are even in when I talk to people that are doing good business, still they're doing good business, so they have changed their business in order to survive and to prosper and to ensure a future for themselves and for the people working there. Fundamentally, there is a lot of unhappiness. People are not enjoying what they're doing.
No, because it's become a race, and it's a race. There's no winner.
it's like the amount of complaints and buyers that are not buying properly, and textile that is not done right, and human conditions in certain factories, and why do we need 20 t-shirts a season, and why do we need to buy of all the t-shirts that you have, some needs to be extremely expensive, and some needs to be extremely cheap. And you need this idea that you score a t-shirt 70% off, and that's, that brings joy to your life. All of that is like, we are trapped. We are trapped as producers, and we are trapped as consumers. And I want to rebel to that. I really want to make sure that people understand that when you're not happy with something, you need to walk away. And I see, we do have solutions, by the way. There are solutions there. There are ways, and probably we need to be more opinionated and stronger with our government, with our ministers, in collaborating, and having intelligent collaboration between companies, because there are ways of doing things differently.
And I think we should try to come up with some realistic and pragmatic ideas, because otherwise it's a philosophical conversation. I think from the end user point of view, we see in some signs that although we're not even close to reaching the tipping point, I think there is a growing sentiment among people that this is not fun anymore. We don't need to keep buying trash. Some people are starting to reject the notion of just buying for the sake of buying new stuff. So that's one step in the right direction.
For sure.
Now, that brings us, of course, to the other side of the coin. There's a whole industry living and surviving and thriving on the assumption that people are going to buy something. With all the talk of sustainability that people are having nowadays, I don't think any one of them is really serious until they tackle the real issue, which is we are wasting resources that we cannot afford to waste. Unless we tackle that one, we're just greenwashing everything. You tell me that it's sustainable because it's using recycled plastic bottles. Give me a break. It doesn't do anything. You're basically taking away plastic that should be used to make new plastic bottles until we finally are mature enough to go back to reusing glass bottles or aluminum containers, which are recyclable. And we keep putting a plastic substance in our clothes, which we know is going to generate a whole number of additional problems. Millions of tons of plastic being dumped in so-called third world countries because we don't really know where to put it anymore.
Right.
The real sustainable approach is to say, we know that resources are limited and we know that we're making too much. So let's see what we can do to limit that without destroying the whole business. I'm not advocating that the brands have to close, factories have to close, retailers have to close. I think we need to work smarter. So let's say you're a brand.
Definitely.
What do you do if you're a brand? Well, first of all, I think you should become a lot smarter in your planning and in how much you're actually making. Everything that you're making in excess is a loss. Better planning and maybe less pie in the sky expectations of what we could sell would be a very good place to start. Remember Enzo Ferrari. He was not only a genius in making cars, but he was a genius in marketing too, because his thinking was always, well, I know that I could sell 1,000 of this new model that I'm making now. So I'm going to make 999 of them because I don't want to fulfill the whole demand. I want people to want to buy my stuff. And I want people to buy it right now because they know that if they wait, they'll probably be left with nothing. Some better brands used to do it in the past. They had smaller production. You knew that if you walked into the store and you liked something, you had to buy it there and then because otherwise it would never be there again. So I think that would be one starting point. Let's say you're a retailer. You have a huge space and you have to fill it up with merchandise. And you know that a lot of that stuff is never going to be sold. But you also know that a lot of people now are looking for vintage garments or secondhand garments. So why don't you take some of your space there? And instead of making disposable crap, why don't you take good used garments and make a whole section where you're only selling used garments?
For sure.
You're still filling up your store. You're still making a profit. You still have a margin. You're probably going to spend less on your procurement than you did before, because you don't have to go through the whole process. And for sure, you're going to have a lot less waste at the end of the season. If you're a factory, then it's a different story, of course. You have people that you have to keep employed and hopefully give them a living wage. But even for a factory, if you start taking old production, secondhand stuff, second quality goods, and you mend them and you repair them and you make new fashion out of those, you can keep a lot of people occupied by doing that.
Yeah, for sure.
That's,
but you see, there are plenty of opportunity of improving and changing your current business and finding new ways, business ways of correcting some of the mistakes and some of the issues. But I think that at the end is, it comes down to people and their companies and their values and principles. Because there are plenty of solutions. I mean, you have listed some very intelligent one at the brand level, at retail level, and also at manufacturing level. And I think at the end is it's all about what feels right for people and the environment. If I have a brand, what will make me happy? That I do a product that it's relevant, that it's priced right, that actually the balance between quality and price is skewed towards quality, because that will give you longevity and durability. I will want people to be paid right. And actually, I don't need to make $100 million a year. I don't need to. I will be very happy with a few. And if I have excess in my earning, which I need to be intelligent enough to say, I can live with this, and all of this is superfluous. And, I will try to help people that actually need that in order to survive. And I think that's part of the injustices that we see all over the world. And I think I'm going always there. I mean, I don't have technical solution, but I'm thinking that, our contribution is to education of citizens, because the citizens, we call it consumer, I call it citizens, really have this they have this incredible power of destroying a brand if the brand is not good. That's an incredible power that very often we don't know we have. And the contribution or the negative impact of marketing is that it's a science created for citizens to buy more stuff than what they need. And the stronger is the marketing, the more stuff you sell, the more stuff you buy, and then repeat season after season, year after year. And that repetition kills people and kills the planet. It's very simple. And I think that it should be maybe all of this should be regulated. I really think so, because our nature, the way we think about business, generally speaking, is polluted. It's totally polluted, and I think that we need to start creating brands and productions entities and marketing entity that are thinking truly differently, and they're taking all of this into consideration. And we need to create a new generation of brands that have a completely different logic to the one we have now.
I wish brand retailers started charging the true cost of product. That instead of panicking, thinking that, if I raise my price by $2, I'm never going to sell anything. They should stop that and should understand that people will still buy and will appreciate better quality. It's more about value. Mm-hmm. If you have something that you know is valuable, you pay more for it. And if you pay more for it, then you don't need to make that much. Because if you're making 100,000 garments to make $1 a garment, or if you make 10,000 garments and you make $10 a garment, at the end, you have the same net result with much less work, with much less waste and everything. I think if you want to find an answer, we can find it. My appeal to all the companies that are claiming to be so sustainable and so worried about the future of the planet is that they start thinking about a more responsible growth.
Yeah, it's a good point. Even though I think that what is responsible growth? Is that quite what can we quantify for a company? It's a free for all type of market where we have the idea of building a $10 million company, and all of a sudden you get there quicker than you thought, and all of a sudden you want to be a $20 million company.
That's the thing that I struggled the most with. Once you have a successful business, whether it's a 1 million, 2 million, 500,000, 5 million, what is the obsession? We're making the 10 become 15 and become 20, become 25 and become 30. Why can't you stop?
I think it's the relationship. I mean, I'm not a successful entrepreneur, fortunately or unfortunately, but I would say that I do want to make money I do want to generate profit for my company. The profit is the profit that I see is the investment that I will make to prolong the fun, to prolong the life of a company. I hope that brings me joy, that makes people happy, that I can create careers for people that eventually will take over my role. And I think that the idea of building something that is interesting and relevant, and also the profit will be definitely utilized to pay back the initial investment, that for sure, but the surplus of that profit should be going into making our life more interesting and learn a lot more, and rather than doubling the revenues or having an aggressive commercial strategy so we can really become global, whatever that means, and contribute further to the negative impact that our industry has in our planet, in our people. So I think that's what I struggle with. It's the regulation of all of this, because I think it's needed. I think people by themselves, the nature that we have, the way we are right now is that we don't give ourselves limits. That would be against the idea of capitalism. But I think that we have generated the new brains that we have, the new brains in our societies, the new generation are heavily polluted. And I think our contribution needs to be philosophical, needs to be in the education side of it. I feel that if I go inside a factory and I talk to people or working with brands, I mean, I can get to a certain level and then I will lose them because other factors comes in. The pressure, the financial pressure, this obsession for growing. I don't know how healthy that is. I like the idea of survival. If I have enough to survive and I have enough to prolong the fun of having built something relevant, whatever that is, small or big, that's pretty fulfilling for me.
I think ultimately that should be the goal, to be mature enough that we realize that profit cannot be an end to itself. Profit is something that a company, a business needs in order to fulfill its real goal. And it's necessary. You cannot have a business that does not generate profit because it dies. So it's necessary Absolutely. For your survival. Absolutely. But it has to be means to ensure that the true goals of the company are fulfilled. Thank you very much for the discussion. This is always fun. I hope that even though we haven't probably solved anything today, but I hope we have put a little bit of thought in people's minds, and then we push people to start thinking a little bit differently, and maybe we start looking at growth
in a different way. Thank you very much, everybody. It was a great brainstorming session. Thank you, Stefano.
Thank you. And we'll be here to take questions if you guys want to. In the meantime, thank you very much. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Thank you very much. And think.
So this was a wonderful talk, and I would like to invite Stefano and if Maurizio is also there, both of them to join the stage and take any questions because there's some good questions coming up. So let me just invite both of them.
Hey.
Hey, Stefano. So Maurizio is also there. Yeah. Hi, Maurizio. How are you?
How are you? All good here.
So that was a wonderful discussion, I would say.
Thank you.
Always a very difficult point or difficult topic, because ultimately it's, no easy solutions, I believe, for this problem. So, but you have given different insights into it and I would say different angles and how this problem can be approached. So let's take up some questions. Stefano, you probably have seen some questions coming up in the discussion. Many people have put it in the discuss part also. You can take it from there also. Some, whichever you feel is the best to be taken up.
Yeah, the question that you put a question there about what do we do with so much production capacity, and that's obviously the first question that we ask ourselves when we start thinking seriously about ending the growth or slowing the growth down. And one thing that I think is important right now is that we need to wait a second and see when the dust settles, and do a head count and see how many brands, retailers, and factories have actually survived and are still in business. And I think that is probably going to cause a dent to the overproduction and overcapacity in any case. And I know it's a really sad situation, and the lives of a lot of people are going to be affected quite dramatically. And for a lot of people in our industry, it's going to be a matter of deciding whether they want to stay in the industry and struggle or reinvent themselves and get out of it and start something new. Or if they stay in the industry, figure out ways to do it in a different way. And so that's one thing. The other thing is that I think there are ways to reinvent the way we do business without necessarily getting rid of our workforce or anything. Maurizio has a setup in Los Angeles where he takes existing garments, old garments, and mends them, repairs them, and gives them a new life. And it's labor is not the only example. There's more around the world who are doing that, which is great. And I know that as great as it is right now, it's not causing a big dent in the overall world production, because how many of the 100 billion garments is he actually making there in his operation? But the important thing is that it's an example that much larger people could follow tomorrow. Like most factories in the world could very easily change part of their operation and start taking existing garments, disassembling them, and making them again into new garments, or just fixing them, repairing them. Textile companies could take existing fabric that they made for people to change their mind or they canceled, and print them, dye them, brush them, sand them. There's a lot of ways that you can reinvent something that should not be dead. It should not be thrown in a landfill or incinerated. Those are crimes. Because every time we do that, it's like it's almost like we're insulting the planet that gave us the resources and the people who worked to make all those products. And I think it's morally unacceptable. So that's something that we should certainly consider. But Maurizio, please step in.
No, I think that central to this is that, first of all, finding solution is complicated. I'm not sure we know exactly what to do. I don't think that there is No one has the perfect idea for that, but I think that something needs to change. My thinking is that there are three elements that I see here that could, say, become the center of attention or of focus for employment. We have billions of garments that have been produced and they're not being used. So the rethinking, the re-engineering of those items is already a massive project. If we're talking about billion of pieces overproduced, we're talking about trillions of yards of textile produced that is waiting for someone to just discover and use it. Plus, the third element, you have secondhand business, which is one of the growing, one of the segment that is growing very, very fast, and a lot of that needs to be sanitized, repair, recondition, and so forth. So I think that we are looking at billions of garments and trillions of yards. That alone will lead to the elimination of a lot of the waste that we have generated and will employ people for sure. Not forever, hopefully, but for a really long time. I think that factories and entrepreneurs and investors should look at these opportunities first before going into producing smarter, but producing a lot more than what we need, which is not a solution. I just read about a knitting machine that can produce using 30% less of material. I mean, this is all great, but it's to sell more sweatshirts, it sells more sweaters, it sells more pants. And I don't think that is the solution. The solution is not that at all. And it saddened me that in the name of sustainability, there are all these initiatives. But somebody needs to say, no, hold on one second. Let's pause for a minute. Let's regulate the production of things. Let's make brands a little bit more aware. Let's make brands less discount based. Let's make quality a priority. Let's produce intelligently. Let's treat people better. Let's educate people and citizens to shop differently. But I think the elimination of waste, in my mind, is the number one game in order to solve at least some of the issues that our industry has.
Absolutely, Maurizio. I think very well said. But I just wanted to ask you, last 1 year, as you mentioned, all these billions of garments which are still lying there to be reused. Did you notice any example of any company, any retailer really, repurposing them in a good quantity, in a good volume and selling around? Because I'm not sure I came across such an example. If that is successful, then probably what you're saying is definitely it's a very good way forward.
I don't have any company in my that I recall now doing this seriously. There are many companies that are testing small quantities and see if that works. Some of the brands' objective is to just play in the game sustainability rather than making it really a strategic change in the mind of brand. I think there are a lot of very, very, very small brand and individual working from home, artisans, if you will, that are finding ways of people that are doing this as a hobby. But to me, those are the leaders because they are in their own home finding ways of making in a creative way also. So it's not only technically ingenious, it's also fun at emotional level to repurpose things. So I think that big brands should look at the opportunity and making a strategy. Unfortunately, I don't know, and I don't want to sound very critical. I don't know if the supply chain system in this company is equipped to take on projects like this. But every company in the planet right now is sitting on inventory.
Yeah, I think some companies are testing the water in a way, Sandeep. So some of the bigger retailers are starting to experiment with repurposing some of the product. I know that when I was back at Levi's, and Maurizio was there too, I was trying to push our guys there to take back all of the secondhand Levi's jeans that were on the market, because I could see there was a gigantic opportunity there, because there were companies that were doing exactly that. They were buying all those old Levi's from rag houses, sorting them, cleaning them, and then reselling them as vintage and making a fortune. And I was trying to convince my friends there, say, why don't we do it ourselves? We take these jeans back from the market. We give people a discount when they buy a new pair. We take them, wash them, clean them. If they can be repurposed, we put them back in circulation, and we control the market. We don't allow all the other people to control where our brand ends up. Mm-hmm. And at the time, the idea was not picked up, because I think it was probably a little bit too early, and people were not so concerned about the overproduction as much as they were concerned with making more and more that they could sell. But I read a few months ago that they're actually doing it now. So I think Levi's has already started this program, and there's another few companies that are doing it. So, like I said, the test in the water, it is something that can definitely be done, but it has to be handled properly.
They need to commit. I think that, and I think that sometimes I realize that we shouldn't be testing. It should be the new normal, that all this waste that we generate is repurposed. And a lot of the waste that we generate is not truly waste. I mean, it's waste, but it's still reconditionable. It's still usable. It's of great quality. I mean, there are fabrics out there. There are containers. There are thousands of containers around the world that are full of textile that is not being touched for years. It's even leather, and I might be controversial on this, but even leather, before we go into mushroom and cactus and alternate vegan leather, what do we do with all the leather that is treated and nobody is using? Before you eliminate that, I mean, those animals are dead. I'm sorry to say that, but they're done. But we have generated so much leather for manufacturing, and we're going to need to use that. The negative impact of burning it's greater than using it for make another jacket.
Yeah, absolutely. You are absolutely correct, Maurizio. Any other point you would like to take from the discussion that is going on? I think a lot of people some people are putting some discussions out there. So if anything else you would like to take up, Maurizio and Stefano?
No, I think obviously the main concern is that our industry absorbs a huge amount of labor. The labor force is gigantic. We've seen in some countries that the governments are trying to discourage that. Actually, they're not investing so much in the textile and the apparel industry as they used to in the past. We've seen it in China, where the local production has started to go down. We see it in India, where there's basically no support from the government to keep the textile and apparel industry going. And you would think that's crazy in a country where where jobs are needed so desperately. But I think what a lot of countries are starting to think is that they're not really interested. They're not really interested in pushing this, because they want people to start getting involved in other activities that are probably more rewarding for the country, for themselves. And also the other thinking, I believe, is the fact that the mechanization that has already started in the industry is eventually going to destroy a lot of the manual labor anyways. That's a problem that is not only going to affect our apparel and textile industry. It's a global thing. So eventually we're going to need less and less manual labor and more skilled and robots and everything that that comes from that. So yes, the main concern in the short term should be try not to shut down factories or mills, because we need to safeguard those jobs. But mostly we should make sure that the people who work in these factories and mills, that they get a living wage, that they're not being treated as two-day slaves, because that's the other disgraceful thing that is happening in our industry, and we perpetuate that by accepting the fact that it's okay to sell a pair of jeans for the price of a Starbucks cappuccino. When you see prices like that, you know that people in the supply chain will not pay the living wage, because it's not possible. It's just, you just do the numbers. It's not possible. There's no way. So that's the other thing that in a way will slowly allow us to mature and make sure that everybody in the industry gets a job, but also gets paid fairly for what they do. And educating people is crucial. We have to educate ourselves, our customers, the suppliers. We have to educate people that we simply cannot keep tapping at resources that are going to be depleted.
I would add also, thank you, Stefano. I would add also that we shouldn't be waiting for government to do anything, because they're not going to do anything. The governments have different plans. And I think instead we need a new generation of entrepreneurs with fresh ideas that are able to employ a lot of people in repurposing what already exists. This is, to me, my number one priority. And there are enough work there for smart entrepreneurs to employ a lot of people, because there is a lot of work to be done. The work is not disappearing. It's the way we are working that is changing. And I think we need to take into consideration what we have generated and what the objective is, which is cleaning first and then produce intelligently. And it is a combination between new entrepreneurships and educating, as you said, educating citizens about buying differently and supporting brands that are honest, that are transparent, that are pro people and profitable for sure, because they will use the profit also intelligently. But we cannot wait for any organization, including our governments, to start anything. They can maybe sponsor some initiatives, but they are not. The power is in the people more than ever.
And eventually the smart entrepreneurs will realize that there is money there, actually.
Sure,
that it makes a lot of sense financially. Sure. As we've seen for example, in the shift from fossil fuel to alternative renewable sources of energies, there's tremendous opportunities there for new factories, new businesses to start and to make a lot of money. Same with the still slow, but the switch from meat to plant-based food. It's a booming industry, and
it's a booming industry.
Yeah, some of the cattle growers, the cattle cattle farms will have to disappear, and it won't be soon enough. But that doesn't mean that everybody's going to lose their job. There are going to be so many new opportunities for these alternative new substitutes that they're not going to go away. So, and the same thing will happen to our industry. I'm quite sure.
Definitely, we just have to ensure that it's as less painful as possible for all of us, and especially for the labor.
For sure.
Thank you, Stefano. Thank you, Maurizio, for a wonderful discussion.
Yeah. Thank you.
And
thank you very much.
It was really, so many points, so many insights to take from here, and I really hope that a lot of entrepreneurs can look into this and can get excited and take the new path. So let's hope for the best, and thank you for joining me. And
thank you, Sandeep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sandeep.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Ciao.